Welcome guys. So today we're going to talk about how to analyze data with PySpark. And I imagine that you have heard much about Spark. And Spark is the most used tool when it comes to handle huge amounts of data. And today we're going to talk how to use it and how to use Spark through PySpark, that is an interface of Spark but in Python. Okay? And you might be too familiar with Python and with pandas, and you might find that this is quite similar, so it's going to be quite simple for you, I'm sure. So first of all, we need like a sample of data, a couple of tables that we would like to transform, maybe join and apply filters and do stuff on them. So I have provided this repository for you, when you can go to the data folder and then download these 3 files. Or if you are familiar with Git, just fork maybe and then git clone this repository. That way you will have everything. Okay? And PySpark can be difficult to install locally, so I will recommend you to use a tool such as Databricks. Okay? And you can use Databricks for free. You can just click this link that I provided in the Medium article as well to try Databricks for free. You fill the data, then click get started for free. You will receive an email to confirm your email address, and then you can get something like this interface. Okay, then you can upload the data there. We can set like S3 bucket credentials and get the data from the cloud, but just to keep it simple, let's upload those 3 files in the file system of Databricks. Okay, that's the way Databricks will have access to these files. So we go to the sidebar, then click data, then go to create table, then we can upload the files there. Okay, I would recommend you maybe to keep things organized, maybe prepare a folder called my data, then select, and then you can upload the files. Okay, after that, after you have the files, you can go to create notebook and you can create a new notebook. I have created a notebook already with like all the steps and the code we're going to talk about today. And this is a project that I did for a data engineering course. So here you can see like the entity relationship model of the database that we have. It's pretty simple. As you can see here, we have just 2 tables, sales, members, and menu. Those 3 are CSV files. That's the way they relate to each other and the data types that we need to create. And the cool feature about Databricks is that it has a Spark session and the Spark context already in place for us, so we don't need to worry about the cluster configuration and the Spark session and assign resources to the cluster and the nodes. It's kind of tricky, all the things that you need to do with PySpark and Spark. So don't worry about that, just use Databricks. Okay? With this couple of commands, we can check the Spark session, the Spark version that we're running. We're running Spark 3.2.1. Maybe by the time you run this, you will have a different version. Same from the Python version that you can check with CSC. That's our Spark context .python version. And as you will see in all the notebook, PySpark use a lot camel case instead of the snake case. That's the way we are used to work with Python. Okay, so we're going to need like several libraries such as PySpark.sql.types to create the schemas and match the schemas to these data types that we need for each column. We are going to need also the functions, and we're going to import all of those functions as F uppercase. Also, we can apply window functions such as row number, rank, sum. You know, if you're familiar with SQL, you might find this quite interesting. And also we can work with libraries such as pandas, matplotlib, and seaborn. And I will teach you how to visualize PySpark data frames, converting them to pandas data frames, and then visualize pandas data frames the way we're used to do it using seaborn and matplotlib. Okay, let's jump right in. All the files that we have uploaded to Databricks are being stored in the Databricks file system. And this is just like where Databricks save the files, and that way you can access those files through the web browser. Okay, you can click here to check more details about how to work with files, all the cool commands that we have, how to list the file, how to copy them, how to move it, how to move them, how to rename them. So we have a lot of stuff in Databricks, but we are here for PySpark, right? So first, let's create those data frames. Let's store, like, just in this dictionary, the location of each file. So first we need to define a schema. So as we saw in the image above, the menu schema has 3 columns: the product ID that is an integer type, the product name that is a string type, and the price that is an integer, right? And we pass that to the struct type, and the struct receive a list of the columns. Let's say we have another column called date, right? We can just add a new line there. Let me just copy this one here. That would be a struct file too. Let's say this one is called created app, and maybe it's a date. So you can pass here just like date type. Okay, but this column is not in the menu file, so let's just drop that one. So after the schema is created, we can create like the data frame. So we call Spark. Remember that Spark is our alias, or the variable for the Spark session. We call the read method. Then we call the format method to specify that it's a CSV. We could have a JSON, TXT, Avro, Parquet, a lot of format that you can use with PySpark. Then you pass several options as these two, to use the first row as the header and infer the schema. Then we can specify the schema and pass the menu schema that we have created. And then we load the path of the menu CSV. Do you remember that this one was a dictionary, and the dictionary with the key menu is just the path of the Databricks file system? Okay. After that, nothing happens, because how Spark works is you transform the data, and if you want to see the actual data, you will have to perform an action, and that action is account, show, and in Databricks you can use the displayed function. So as you can see here, now that we have menu, we can use menu.show, and that will show like all the rows in the data frame. If we can just specify a number and you see those two. And also in Databricks we have this cool function, and this will be just for Databricks. Okay, you can call here display and pass menu data frame as the parameter here, and then you see like the same data frame, but just in a nicer way. That's cool. And here, let's say that you have data you can visualize. You can check here, there is a couple of options to visualize it. You can modify the size of the graph, and that's it. Okay, so we can use the print schema to check the schema of the data frame. Now we see that we have a product ID that is an integer, a product name that is a string, and a price that is an integer too. And then we can call the columns attribute to get like the columns of that data frame. We're going to do the same for the sales data frame and the same for members data frame. I will leave up to you how to do it, and just remember that you have the solution in the HTML link. That way you get the notebook that I have created, but just a different format. Okay, but it's the same data there. So good practice sometimes is to include these data frames in the SQL context as like temporary tables or temporary view, let's say. So we can call for each data frame the method called create or replace temp view, and as parameter we pass the name of that temporary view that we want to create. So the sales data frame, let's create a temporary view with the name sales. And what is this for? So in the next code blocks, we could use a SQL command such as select star from sales, and we will get the data frame and all the results, and we can perform like SQL joins, order bys, group bys using plain SQL, and maybe you are more familiar with SQL than from PySpark data frames. So that's pretty cool, huh? So let's do the same for members and menu. Then we check with this SQL context table names method the tables that we have created. Okay, these all details I will teach you what is this one. So let's begin with the data analysis. So as I told you, we are dealing with data from a restaurant. So let's say that we want to get how much is customer spend in the restaurant, and if you don't remember how the tables relate to each other, we go back to this image and see that we store all the sales in the sales table, but to get the price for each product we will need to go to the menu table. Okay, and you see that the primary key in the menu is product ID and the foreign key in sales is product ID. So we can just perform like the SQL logic to join these two tables on this key and get the price, right? So let's go back to the code and let's just check how to do that using Spark data frames and how to do it with Spark SQL. Okay, so first let's do it with data frames. So we have the sales data frame, then we can perform the join with the menu using the product ID in both tables and using an inner join. Here we can specify left join, right join. You can see all the types in the documentation. Then you can group by customer ID. Then after you have that aggregation level, you can perform some aggregation functions such as sum the price and then give an alias to that sum, total spend. And then as now we have just these two columns, customer ID and total spend, we can order by that column. And yeah, maybe this is too much at first. So the cool thing about data frames and chaining the methods is that you can just uncomment and comment these lines. So let's say we're going to comment this I'm using Mac, so I'm using command and slash, and we comment that, and then we are going to perform here display or show. Let me just use show this time. Sometimes I like to use one or the other. So let's execute this code and show the data frame. And see, we have just the sales data frame. That's the step that we have, nothing else. Let's just now uncomment the second part, that is the join part. So the result that we will expect is the sales data frame with the menu data, right? So let's execute that. As I told you, we aren't going to see anything until we perform an action, and the show is the action, okay? So here we have all the sales data, that is customer, order data, and product ID, and then we have the menu data, that is product ID, product name, and price. Okay, but the question is how much each customer spent in the restaurant. We do that grouping by customer and zoom in and sum the price of all the products that that customer has bought, right? So let's go there and do that. Let's group by customer ID and then call the method add from aggregations, and here you can pass several aggregations: the sum of the price, the average of the price, the count of the price. But right now we are just interested in the sum of the price of the products to get the total spent by each customer. So let's call f. Remember that f is all the SQL functions, and we just call f.sum on the price column, and then assign an alias to that new column that would be like the sum of all the prices for each customer, and call that column total spend. So that way when we execute again, so remember, execute the transformation and then execute the action, we will see that we have the customer ID and the total spend. But what if we want to order that by this new column called total spend in descending order? That way we have in the first row the customer that has spent the most. So let's just uncomment the other line. Remember, transformation then action, and we can order by that column. Sometimes you have to specify that you are working with a column, and then call the descending method. Okay, and that way you will have the customer ID A with the total spend 76. Let's say this is dollars or whatever currency you want to work with. And the cool thing about Databricks is, remember that you can use display, and you will have like this table view, but as you click here you will find that you have several options to plot. Okay, and you can zoom in, zoom out, span or decrease the size of the graph. Okay, so now let's going to do the same but with SQL. Maybe you are more familiar with SQL, you don't want to mess with all of these methods. Hey, maybe I don't know how to order by, but I know how to do that with SQL. So why to make things more complex? Let's use SQL. So remember that we have created the temporary views, and there, after we have created those views, we can just select from the sales, select from menu, or select from members. Remember, that's the other temporary view, and then perform our SQL logic. We just want by customer ID from sales, get the sum of the menu price for each product ID from sales, and inner join with menu using the product ID from sales and the product ID from menu, grouping by customer ID, and then ordering by total spend, that is the alias of our new column, and descending. If we execute that and then call this parsation.sql to create another data frame that is called result1SQL, we pass that query we just created in the step before, and we see the same result. So you can work with these two methods. Now I'm going to show you how to visualize the data, but with Seaborn and Matplotlib. So we cannot work with Seaborn and Matplotlib until we have created a pandas data frame. Even though PySpark has its own data frames, they are not the same as pandas data frames. So we need to call the method toPandas on the data frame that we have created using data frames, or in the data frame that we have created using Spark SQL, and we just call the method toPandas. That way we will have a pandas data frame, and here we can perform like all the methods that we know about pandas data frames, and that way then we can visualize the data using Seaborn and Matplotlib and all the cool tricks that you may know about this. Let me know in the comments if maybe you want a session about how to use Seaborn and Matplotlib with pandas data frames. That would be great. Okay, so you see how to use Spark data frames and Spark SQL, how to convert them to a pandas data frame and then visualize it with Seaborn and Matplotlib. And in the other question, we have 10 different questions. How many days each client has visited the restaurant? Which was the first item each client bought? Then we have which was the most popular plate in the menu. We have like several cool questions that you may have in real life, because that's maybe the kind of data and the kind of insights that you would like to have. Also, you have window functions. As I told you, the rank, maybe you want to get like the first customer by points, the first customer after an X date or something like that. You can apply filters, and remember that if you don't want to get too swamped by all of this code and methods and all of the things that you have, you can just perform SQL, as you can see here. Like, what was the first item after the client became member? I mean, it's kind of difficult, like, to remember the syntax to use window functions, and I mean, just do it in SQL, okay? And the cool thing is, maybe you can create like a data frame with Spark SQL and then apply Spark data frame methods. So maybe you know how to do one thing with SQL and you know the other part with Spark data frames, and you can use them together. So I will provide everything in the link in the description of the video. Let me know if you have any doubts about the article of the methods that I use. Even if you find like better ways to do what I just did here, please let me know. I will be happy to learn new things. And that's it for today. Stay in tune and follow me for more.